Hello and welcome to the HPTV Podcast, the podcast all about the HBO Harry Potter TV series coming in 2027. In this episode, we're going to deep dive into Brooms and Quidditch, as well as give you an update on all to do with the TV series that we are really hoping happens with the sale of Warner Brothers coming up. I'm Mitchell here along with Stephen and Jamie Crum. First and foremost, Warner Brothers look like they're going to be bought by Paramount, who just got bought by Skydance, and have Larry Ellison, who is I think he was the richest man in the world, but only for like a week, and then he got passed. Anyway, he thought about also buying Warner Brothers, combining two big brands, two big streamers right now, but also two classic theater studios. And now we've heard that Netflix may be considering buying Warner Brothers. And that makes it extremely realistic that Harry Potter could premiere on Netflix in 2027. How does that make you feel in your bosoms?
It makes me worried that we'll have 10 years between every season, like Stranger Things. And the kids will be looking 20 when they're supposed to be 13 years old.
Well, Netflix, they can't mess with the plan. Like, they
No.
put all this infrastructure in place. They said, we're going to film at a certain pace. The kids will probably age a little too fast, but that's literally impossible to change. So
What are you going to do?
Yeah. And we said this last week that if Paramount bought them, they're going to keep their tent poles. If Netflix buys them, they still will. But man, Netflix would, if it wasn't benefiting Netflix, they would end it. They used to be like a renew. And now they're kind of a cancel culture.
Well, wasn't Netflix in trouble a few years ago? It's kind of funny how this all works.
Netflix had a moment. So Netflix for a long time essentially was worth a lot of money and spending a ton of money. And it was all on perspective, on what if. And then their stock crashed because everyone was like, where's this cash going to come from? And the bill came due, and Netflix started cutting a ton of costs. And then they added the ad tier, which still hasn't been that incredible. And they cut down on passwords. They did everything they could to flip this and show that they're going to be cash rich, and it's worked. So they are just the one utility right now in entertainment that seems like almost every home has. So they've done well in that way, but like long term, inheriting a big Hollywood studio and their entire library and these big brands, like that means Netflix is operating DC, which means so much more than just the James Gunn movie version they're making. So it's going to be interesting, but it seems like talks have cooled off a little bit. We're not going to get an imminent sale, but man, it sure seems like it's leaning.
There's definitely a bidding war of some sort going on.
Which they must be so thankful because they're like, oh, you're going to have to sell to Ellison for whatever he wanted. And anyway, this show could be on HBO Max. It could be on Paramount Plus. It could be on Netflix. And by the end, it could be on Disney. No, Disney's probably the one that would be on there. Not that cash rich, but you never know. Amazon, Apple, maybe.
Well, don't you think
don't know how
even if Netflix were to buy Warner Brothers, you think they would roll everything into Netflix, or would they keep HBO Max as a separate thing? Because don't they have Discovery on its own other platform now too? Because that
I
didn't
think it
work
would be a
merging them all together.
process.
Yeah.
Like the Hulu Disney thing where it was like they were separate entities for a long time, and then like Disney Plus started getting some of that content on theirs when FX came into like play, and now they're like basically combined. I mean, I know it's technically still like you're getting a dual package or whatever, but they're together now.
Well, it's interesting because they're starting to launch Hulu internationally and replace this brand they have called Star, which is what Hulu Originals come up as Star Originals for me here. So it'll be interesting to see, is Hulu a tile, or do they try and distribute as an app, or is that slowly going to die? And that's the only reason I think Netflix might turn it all Netflix. One, they love to brand things Netflix. And two, people are complaining about that they have too many streaming services. The only other hitch, yes, is that HBO is such a premium brand. And we know that there are HBO Max originals that are very good, including The Pit, which just won Best Drama at the Emmys. Fantastic show. But the best of the best, they're turning to be HBO. So The Last of Us, Game of Thrones, and Harry Potter, those are their genre movies. Obviously, all their big tentpole shows over time have been HBO. So the only thing I can think is that maybe they'd keep HBO, that really thin brand, separate, but everything else like DC, I don't know, why would you keep that in with HBO? That fits actually better with Netflix, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like especially series wise, if they do. But then it also concerns me about things being released on Netflix and not getting along as long as a theater run. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine this coming out as a binge? I'd be mad.
Man, dropping the whole thing. We wouldn't sleep for like a whole, weekend. But no, I just worry because Netflix has no problem like putting out absolute garbage sometimes. Like, they have some really trashy reality TV and some really, like, B and C movies, and so
Love is Blind Harry Potter edition.
Oh my
I
gosh,
could see
I'd
them
kill
saying,
for it.
like, "How cheap could we actually make Harry Potter?" Like, they have all the sets built and stuff, so what can that works.
They do spend money on some things, and I do wonder if they'd keep these as kind of individual studios under the Netflix brand, but keep the branding. I think if they're going to spend money on anything, it's going to be Harry Potter and Game of Thrones. They could not let those slip, because the other thing is people are like, Netflix only keeps things that feels like they're bringing in new subscribers or really holding people in. Like, they started canceling these shows that were in their top 10 because they're just like, oh yeah, like decent viewing numbers, but it is not what is propelling our service forward.
Well, and isn't
Attracting new
Netflix,
viewers.
I mean, the great thing Netflix did when they did start doing Netflix originals was original content, like not sequels, not remakes. Orange is the New Black was a big deal. And,
Yeah.
even Stranger Things, like in a world where we're getting a lot of remakes, like this podcast is about, but we're excited for this one. It was nice they're doing. So I wonder how they would handle jumping into a catalog of of DC,
It's kind
going
of
into Harry
known though
Potter,
that
Game of Thrones.
they've wanted to try and build their own IP, and nothing has
Yes.
really grabbed on. Like, they've released a bunch of movies that they were hoping would kind of turn into a like mini universe, and like they did try and spin off Stranger Things, and that didn't work. And then the Duffer Brothers signed with another company, and they have tried to expound what they have, but what they haven't done is buy an existing brand. But yeah, we'll see. Let's talk about some filming updates that we have that seem to be pretty legit after some research. So there was some filming, and it was in Hodston. I could be saying that wrong, and I live like an hour away from it.
To say,
But
you're the one who would know, Mitchell.
it seems like there have been some areas that have been getting crews out there, and they're dressed for 90s, and people think this is part of Vernon's day one out there when he sees the weird people in the owls in the shops. And there have been two different spots in that town, and then there was another one where somebody saw like little whinging in a window, or like on a newspaper or something. So these things are out. They're shooting out in Luton. The other big thing, and this is the one that is not 100% verified, but I don't know if you guys looked at the Reddit links.
Yeah.
But there was some shooting in a park, and it seemed to be a ginger woman and a brunette man. She seemed to be holding a wand. There may have been some practical magic effects where it looked like they had used real fire, real sparks to show some magic, and they were walking through. Now, this would be presumably Harry's parents, Lily and James. Like, I just thought about their names are Lily and James, and there's an actress named Lily James.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Maybe Lily James is playing Lily.
It's really interesting that they would be, because that's not in the books. Straight up, we never get to see them date. Someone said they might even have a baby with them. So it's like, were they just taking a stroll with Harry? But that one's, again, it's kind of all rumored, but there is actual footage of these people on a set. And I think there's like, it's called like the Brown Rabbit or something. They have like a code name for the show. Like every different set is getting a different code name. So it's quite clear that there might be something that was not in the books. And now here's my only objection to that, because I think that could really enrich that background. If they leave something out, I'll be like, well, why'd you add something new and take away something I wanted?
Even like Game of Thrones, the final seasons, where they'd have these long like sequences of the dragons flying that cost $1 million freaking dollars, and they'd leave out like important character development. Yeah, just that.
And they didn't have the dragons when we needed them in the season before. But anyway, I do. What I don't like if we do get a lot, because even in the movie, I think we don't really even get a picture of James and Lily till the end of movie 1.
Yeah.
We get that picture, which just could also be, I thought about that. I was like, maybe this is like a photo shoot for like stuff like that, or imagery for the mirror. It could have been that as well.
Ooh, that's...
But until we get to the mirror, Harry has no clue what his parents really look like or anything like that, because the Dursleys haven't shown him. So us as the audience are also in the blind. And so I kind of like that about the book. And then when you get that reveal, it's like kind of exciting in a bigger moment that Harry's seeing his family for the first time. So I hope they don't just throw it in episode 1 or something.
Well, and I wonder if, it could be a little bit of background, like, because there is the background story we now know about, like, the Dursleys and the Potters and how they didn't get along, something like that. But I wonder, too, if it's just, like, footage for Harry's, like, because he has these little flashbacks, right? Like, all he remembers about the car accident is green flashes. So I do wonder if like they'll have like flashes and then like a quick frame or two of something that you can't even actually see kind of stuff, but they want to have that footage for it. But I do think, like Mitchell said, I'm excited if they like build it out a little bit, if they flesh it out and we get to see some Lily and James and like what they're actually like with Harry, because we know so little of that.
I think they also want to have some surprises. They want to have, because we
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. They're like, we can't change the plot, but we can put in some moments that are going to delight and enrich while being not adding, something completely new or out of story. We don't even know who's been cast as Lily and James, despite all the other. We've gotten some smaller casting bits. Now, one that came out recently from Wizarding World Direct, which people seem to believe, and they're the ones that are tweeting out a lot of these leaks. And they've put out here that Svetlana Karabut, that's my best guess. I'm not going to be able to pronounce all the last names of Svetlanas in the world, has been cast as Septima Vector. So that is the arithmancy professor. And we know Hermione takes that class. And there is a picture of an actress that people say apparently was credited as Professor Vector, but we don't ever meet or have a line with Professor Vector. So, and again, you don't take arithmancy till after second year. Second year is kind of when third year is when they add on all those subjects and Hermione takes too many. So cool. If she sits at the table for a couple years and then Hermione has a class with her, or if she's just a background rando and someone figured out this little bit of casting, that's cool with me. I like the idea of filling this out, and I hope she's in all 7 and doesn't have a single line.
Yeah, because she's not really in the book either. And I did think this was a man. I will admit that. The character in the book. And I did cast Mitchell in this role. So for one, I was completely off about that. And I'm sorry, Mitchell, your role has been taken.
Also, I don't know what arithmancy is because it sounds like arithmetic, but I don't think I'd be good at teaching it.
We still have other roles for you.
You're an actor. Act like it, Mitchell.
But it's fun to see that filming is still popping up all around London and people are catching it. I saw a couple rumors of somewhere else they're going to shoot in a couple days. I'm so sorry I'm not dedicated enough to chase down these. But you know what? As someone who was around the set of Ted Lasso a lot, like 3 years ago, you get very little out of it. I don't know. And this would be a more protected set. I'm like, would I learn or get excited about much? Not really. But please, Francesca, if you're listening, hire me. I'd be great.
Well, I will say all the Ted Lasso stuff keeps popping up. The filming of the new season keeps popping up in my algorithm, and I'm like, oh, there's Mitchell's old neighborhood, but you're not there anymore.
Well,
so it's not as exciting.
They say they actually. So I was living in student accommodation doing my master's, and they actually set up their prep tents in our lawn, in our front area, and then my spot at the bridge is where they shot at the river. Like we walked down past it, and they had a shot at this little house that I would walk by every other day. Like our coffee shop that like my wife and her friends would go study at and work at, like they were literally at all of our spots, and it was wild. So that was in Twickenham and then some of Richmond, and I would go to the Richmond spots, but I was only there once or twice while they were filming. While I am still right there, I don't really go into that area, but it is super weird to see when it does happen. I moved a little too far away.
Into that area.
Yeah, it's
your
true.
baby.
We had
they
to
need a
go.
cute baby on screen.
Yeah, who's
who's
having a baby? Maybe those two characters that are in love have a baby. I don't think he's in it. What's the guy's name? Roy Kent.
Roy Kent. I can't think of his real name right now. He was rumored to be Hagrid.
He's got some rom-com coming out. He's in Shrinking. He's touring.
Hercules.
He should have been Hercules. Stupid MCU. Anyway, I digress.
Brett Goldstein. My gosh.
You.
I'm like, it's on the tip of my tongue.
I know. How could not? We love you, Brett. I'm sorry we couldn't remember your name. You can be serious. I don't care. All right. Let's get into our deep dive of the day. So again, person, place, or thing. This is kind of a thing. Broomsticks and Quidditch, they're things. They're things. Sports.
Yeah,
so obviously pre-Harry Potter, witches on brooms were a thing. We've seen them in movies, and there's some real life origins, probably, maybe. I don't know. This is up to Jamie.
Well, Mitchell, I made a joke about doing the history of brooms, and Mitchell thought that was funny. So I did do a little bit of the history of actual brooms. And I see Mitchell put notes as well for the history of actual brooms. And I will say this is kind of interesting because there's no exact invention date for the broom, which makes sense because it sounds like in the beginning people just took sticks or bushels together and used them to sweep things or to dust things off, and that seems like a practical application that someone one day was like, oh, I should make this into a broom.
I work around a lot of I used to do this is very random. I did filming at equestrian competitions like the Grand Slam of show jumping, and we would be bound back in the stalls and they'd be sweeping. And you know what they did? They said the best way to sweep hay was still just with these sticks wrapped around it and put in a little bushel and
The
sweep away at
original
the
broom?
hay. So it is a natural human instinct.
Sweep. We are meant to sweep. And apparently mostly women are meant to sweep, but that will be part of this. So there's no actual invention date, but the basic idea was bundling twigs, reeds, or branches and tying them to a stick. And then sweeping, not an actual broom, is mentioned even in the Bible. So people think it goes back to the biblical times in Luke 15, 8 through 10. I don't know if that's just because of a translation or that actually was happening in those times. But, whatever. We'll have to ask, what's his name?
I do think the
Guy
handle was
McCullough?
a really,
Dan McClellan.
really good
Dan
addition.
McClellan. The
Can you
handle
imagine
was a
having to
great
bend
addition.
over all the time to do that? Man, my back
Mhm.
hurts just thinking about it.
So, and then in medieval times, there were besom squires who specialized in binding the birch and twigs. So I guess they were called besoms then. And then broom making remained mostly small scale. And then in 1797, the modern broom making truly began when a thoughtful Massachusetts farmer named Levi Dickinson fashioned a broom from tall grass called broomcorn as a gift for his wife. Every woman wants something to clean with. That's
So you're saying it's American.
Hey, it's making her life easier is what it was doing.
I will say, I've had my husband for. I'm like, if you want to get me a nicer vacuum that's going to suck more for cleaning, get me that. It makes my life easier. But he has to use it too. It was sturdier and more effective than before, and then it became popular. And by the 1800s, he and his son were selling hundreds each year. So good on Dickinson making money off the broom. But interesting fact, the first depiction of a witch playing on a broom was apparently in 1453, which was like way before that. And I read a few articles on this, which I found really intriguing. One was from History, like I'm pretty sure like the History Channel, but history.com, and one was from Forbes. And they kind of had different takes on it. On Forbes, they were talking about like they would use basically like different herbs and like, treatments on brooms that would make people, and I guess in general, cleaning that would make people hallucinate. And so they thought people were hallucinating that they were flying on the broom or something. It was like a salve from the
Good
plants,
times.
whatever. But whatever, have fun. But also it's been traced back, which this was more of the history article, that in pagan times, and there was like pagan fertility rituals for plants, villagers would leap on poles or brooms and dance around to encourage their crops to grow. And that also could be where the idea of people flying on brooms comes from. And then it fused to be like a Halloween icon because it's made up in pagan ritual, women usually using the broom and the harvest time. Um, and then obviously there's like the whole association with women and that accusing women of being witches and basically saying that they could take any household item and bewitch it and put evil into it, like even their broom, and fly off. So there's also that element of being associated with women. But still to this day, you think of Halloween, there's always some sort of image of a witch on a broom. And then in Harry Potter, JK took it to a whole nother level with a whole sport being played and travel.
Hey, it is a sport that men and women can play together equally at the highest levels.
And men and women in the books travel on brooms outside of just the sport.
It's true. It's
So that's my
much
lesson
more.
on brooms and witches.
I also
flying
think
on
that
them.
brooms are a big piece of Halloween just because everyone has a broom. A witch is the easiest costume ever because you grab your broom and you paint your face green and you're good to go.
And we have fun things like Hocus Pocus, where there is only like one broom or two brooms.
There's a vacuum.
Once it starts to vacuum, yeah. And then in the sequel, there's like the Roombas.
Yeah.
They bewitch on their own.
I think that happens in Sabrina the Teenage Witch as well, where she rides a vacuum.
Oh yeah, in the opening, I think even she's riding a vacuum. So household cleaning items to fly on.
There you go. Now back to Harry Potter.
In the wizarding world, obviously they use brooms a lot. And so brooms are the primary means of transportation in the magical world. The earliest references to flying broomsticks, at least in the magical world, date back to the 10th century. At first, they were little more than just enchanted household brooms uncomfortable and unreliable. And this goes back to the conversation we had a while back. Remember about how uncomfortable it would be to sit on a broom, the massive wedgies that people would have to experience. And that's what they dealt with back then. So early brooms lacked cushioning charms. There were no steering mechanisms or safety features, and riders often endured splinters, which was, down where, and unsteady flight paths and accidents. But by the Middle Ages, broomstick flight had become more standard, especially as wizards and witches sought ways to travel quickly and discreetly without attracting Muggle attention. Which I think is really counterintuitive, because even if your broom is consistent and not going all over the place, you're still like flying in the air. Wouldn't the Muggles see that? Like, it'd be pretty visible. I don't know. But over time, the broomsticks were refined with charms that improved speed, control, and comfort. So the cushioning charm was developed in the 12th century. So think about that: 200 years of no cushioning charm, riding those brooms all over the place. And it was developed by Elidora Ketteridge, apparently. Um, and they made broomsticks bearable to sit on for long periods. So you could, go more than just a few miles down the road. You could actually travel long distances. Steering charms became more sophisticated and allowed for finer control of altitude and direction. And then anti-muggle detection spells were eventually woven into most brooms to prevent accidents that could happen in the presence of non-magical people. There are some other just key things as broomsticks become more than just transport, right? They're central to wizarding culture. And then as Quidditch develops, there became a need for better brooms, right? That were like the sporty version that could go faster and help you to win the games. And so initially you had some brands like the Moon Trimmer broom, which was one of the first ones in 1901. Then there was the Clean Sweep Broom Company. In 1926, it was founded. And just a few years later, the Comet Company also started to release brooms. So you'll hear about the Clean Sweeps and the Comets as kind of the lower tiered brooms, and they developed better and better models over the years. There were others like the Tender Blast, the Swift Stick, and then the Shooting Star, which still gets referenced quite a bit in the books and the movies as kind of like an older, less fancy version of the brooms. And then in the late 60s is when Nimbus started creating racing brooms. And so it's actually created by the Nimbus Racing Broom Company, and the first release was the Nimbus 1000. And so that was a huge advancement, and that's what all the Quidditch players turned to using almost right away. Then the next big one came in 1993, which is what we talked about before when we went over the third movie, when Harry discovers the firebolt. And that's the year that it was released, was in 1993. And so that to this day is the epitome of broom technology. And around 2014, we learn, I think it was through Pottermore, through the time that we had the reports about the Quidditch World Cup that year, but there's now a model called the Firebolt Supreme, which was introduced in 2014. So newer, faster, cooler, and using that Firebolt name. So they are much more than just transport. They're status symbols as well, because some are obviously more expensive than others. So you get, the Malfoys of the world who can buy an entire Quidditch team, the newest broom, which was Nimbus 2001 at the time. And you have the others who have to kind of settle for the hand-me-downs. The Shooting Star is known for being an inexpensive broom that's commonly used in schools. So they're slow, they're prone to losing speed over time, but that's what they'll buy like in bulk for kids to learn on in the schools. So a lot of really cool brooms. Thank goodness for that cushioning charm. I was riding my bike yesterday actually, and even that seat, man, those things hurt your butt. So I'm
I
gonna have
didn't
to
know you
get
could
me
ride a bike.
some kind of cushion on there. It has been a minute, but trying to get back in shape and all that. But like I said, my butt still hurts, and we have to figure that out.
I always thought, oh, I could do a cycling trip. I could be a cyclist. And then I hurt my tailbone in a car accident a few years ago, and then I took a spin class just last year, and I did not feel great. So cushion charms all around, please.
Also see, I find it interesting that they have the Nimbus 1000, and then it went to 2000, and then it went to 2001. They're like, "Oh, we leaped 1,000, and then we're just gonna do what
Well,
now?
and
Too
there
many
was
people
like
listening to
a
that.
40-year break in the middle too. So I wonder if like history just didn't take note of all the models in between. I wonder if there was a 1001 or
But
something.
I think of video games. You had the Xbox, and then the Xbox 360, and then the Xbox. I don't know what was the next one. Series S, Xbox One.
It was the Xbox One X.
It makes no sense. There's another thing that I'm thinking of.
Galaxy phones.
Well, yeah, they went 10 to 20, and then the iPhone, I swear, like skipped a bunch too. They did like the 11 and the 12, and then skipped to the Super Max.
Well, Galaxy did it to catch up to the year, so that they can, the number matches the year. And I think iPhone's like trying to catch up to the year, but they like skip numbers sometimes. It's a little wacky.
Yeah, branding. It's a branding thing. I could market broomsticks. All right, well, let's take a brief look at Quidditch, as it is, something Harry's passionate about. And I think if you've ever been in a community that is obsessed with a sport, I actually think it makes things a little bit clearer for the wizarding world. Like, it is so similar to the way that kids here are all a fan of soccer teams. So that is kind of how Quidditch is presented in that way, where there's just this obsession. Like, it is so critical to everything, although then they don't mention it that much. Like, Ron never once is like, guess what happened in the Chudley Cannons game, and they'd never try and use magic to get TV. They're just listening on a radio. Anyway, I digress. So Quidditch is a broom based sport, but it was not the first one. It's actually an amalgamation of many. Let me give a shout out to just a couple. Now, we go to really early on in Harry Potter times. J.K. Rowling released 2 small books, Fantastic Beasts Where to Find Them and Quidditch Through the Ages, with just these thin little fun books that had like information. And so some of this is from that. And then we kind of got some more through time from like the little video games and everything. So the first game was called Stitchstock, originating in Germany, where a wizard acted as a guardian protecting an inflated dragon bladder, and players would mount on broomsticks and attempt to pierce the bladder. There's an Irish game where they'd fly through burning barrels while catching a ball and then try and throw it into a hoop. And then there was a Scottish game where they wore cauldrons on their heads and they had to fly around and catch stones in the cauldron. And then there was jousting called shunt bumps. I've heard of that before. And then there was like some tennis on a broomstick called Swivenhodge. So look, a lot of different things came together to create Quidditch. So Quidditch, I don't feel like if you're listening to this, you probably don't need to know the rules, but we got the 4 balls. We got the 7 different players. The snitch is the most important one. I think that is the only one that kind of like has its own little history. It's specifically the golden snitch. Let's not forget. But originally there was actually a magical bird called the golden snidget, and it was introduced in 1269 when the chief of the Wizards Council, Barbarous Bragg, unleashed a golden snidget during a Quidditch match, offering a reward of 150 galleons to the player who caught the snitch. And then it became customary, and they were frightened little birds, and as a tribute, 150 points were given to the team that caught that. Kind of ruining the rules of the game. You got to think, without the snitch, actually Quidditch makes a lot more sense. And it is a flawed game. And we just have to accept it and let it play its role in the story, because Harry's got to be good at something. But yeah, so that's kind of your background. There was the first Quidditch World Cup was in 1473. Sorry. That is the one in 1473 is one where all 700 fouls were committed. Now there are 11 aforementioned fouls that are kind of the common 11, the ones that you always get. Just like in football, you get a handball. American football, you get a hold or an offsides. And of course, there's a magical games and sports department. There are some differences in the movies. Like the rules in the book say you can't leave the pitch. They obviously do. And the quaffle is just a regular ball. It's described, but it kind of has these indents, which, you know what? Good movie invention. Well, the other one is the first ever Quidditch match took place at Queerditch Marsh. And we do know J.K. Rowling used a lot of Q words. She really wanted her sport to start with Q for whatever reason. And the Quidditch World Cup started in 1473. Wait, why is it? That's confusing that's also the year all the fouls were committed. That's a little sus. Someone's got some bad information there. I should have fact-checked it. Terrible journalist. All right, here we go. Now, in the story, I think remember Harry's initial happiest memory when he's facing the Dementors is one of his first broom rides. This is one thing that comes naturally to him. And I think if you've ever had an athletic feat come naturally to you, or an academic thing that you just, something clicked with you and so many other things don't click in your life, I think this is a really nice moment for Harry. Of course, Quidditch kind of tails off in the book, and it matters to Harry, which I think is important, and it comes into play. But J.K. Rowling says, I didn't really enjoy writing it. And it makes sense because it doesn't actually make sense. You know, her writing sport, her writing romance, she's good at other stuff. So actually in the books, Harry Potter plays 2 matches in the Philosopher's Stone. He plays against Slytherin and almost dies, choking on the snitch and being attacked by Snape and Quirrell. That one takes place in the movie. That is the only Quidditch match in that movie. But also in the book, they play Hufflepuff, and that's when Snape is the ref. Oh, and this is something I can't wait to be in the show, because Harry is freaked out, and then he ends up catching the snitch really fast. And that's where everyone's like, oh my gosh, he's amazing. And that's where like his skills really start to come through. Then he misses the 3rd match because he's unconscious in the hospital wing. Weird thing at Hogwarts, there are only 3 matches for each house, which is not the greatest. They could at least play each other twice each. They could do a double round robin. Anyway, in the Chamber of Secrets, he plays 1 match against Slytherin. The other 2 were canceled because of the basilisk attack. And in Prisoner of Azkaban, that's the only time Harry played all 3 matches. He goes against Hufflepuff, and that's where he sees the Grim and the Dementors and breaks his broom. He plays against Ravenclaw, and that's where Malfoy pretends to be a Dementor. And then they win the cup against Slytherin.
So they don't even have like a playoffs where they play them again? It's just the 3 games?
No. I'm pretty sure it's just whoever has scored, whoever has the most wins and points at the end of playing 3 games. It's never explicitly described. Also, sometimes they imply that the points from Quidditch go towards your house. And I'm like, that seems to be quite a plus. Yeah, it's funny because the points, obviously, Harry gets docked 50 when he gets caught out at night in the Sorcerer's Stone, but he only loses 1 point when Snape is being rude. So it's like, we need a balance here of what points actually matter.
They're all over the place.
This is its own conversation. There's a point where students could take points, but others couldn't.
Yeah. Can prefects take points or not? Because Malfoy says they can't. Percy says they can, because then Malfoy takes him away when he's a member of the Inquisitorial Squad. Goblet of Fire does not feature any Hogwarts Quidditch, but it does have the Quidditch World Cup final, which obviously a very important moment for Harry to see the world expanding and then be attacked by Death Eaters. And then in the 5th book, we get the Weasleys are king storyline, which is fantastic. And we get Harry getting kicked off the Quidditch team because he gets into a fight. And it's quite fun. Oh, and Harry also misses a match to Watron because of Grop. Again, that's a good use. That's a good use of it. And finally, he played 2 matches in Half-Blood Prince against Slytherin and Hufflepuff. He missed his 3rd match because of Sectum Sempra. And Gryffindor versus Slytherin, Harry played, and Ron was a keeper who thought he was drunk on Felix Felicis. So she does do a good job of weaving Quidditch in even after she stops caring about it. Harry, here's some stats, won 7 of the 9 matches he played in the books. Both times he lost was against Hufflepuff. He also missed 9 Quidditch matches while studying at Hogwarts, 5 due to cancellation, 3 due to being punished. And now here's the runtime of Quidditch in each movie, because the movies feature even less Quidditch. In the first movie, there's a big long sequence of it, and there's a training sequence with him and Wood, 7 minutes and 39 seconds. Chamber of Secrets, we do get the cancellation, don't we, as well? Like they start to go out for the 2nd match and it gets canceled. 4 minutes and 52 seconds. Prisoner of Azkaban, which again, in the books, has the most Quidditch, 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Goblet of Fire has 1 minute and 40 seconds, including lots of peripheral stuff from the Quidditch World Cup. Order of the Phoenix, 0. They amalgamate that story into Half-Blood Prince, where there is only 1 minute and 16 seconds, and then 1 minute and 28 added if you count the training sequence, and 0 Quidditch in movies 7 and 8. So it's just not, it plays into Harry as a character. I think it matters that he's a nerd who has this physical talent, who is a jock in some ways, because when he's dumb, you can kind of be like, oh, he's kind of the dumb jock. And then I just want to shout out, in Expanded Universe, Quidditch makes some stupid brief appearances in Cursed Child, which doesn't matter because what a horrible, horrible piece of fan fiction. But go see it. It's good. And then it does not really feature in Fantastic Beasts, other than Newt making one joke when someone calls him a seeker and he goes, I'm more of a chaser. We don't know if he played chaser. We also don't know for a fact if James played seeker, do we? Like, that's in the movie, but not in the book.
Yeah,
and then
that's something they made up, I think.
Yeah.
We don't know for sure.
There are 2 Harry Potter Quidditch games, video games. One that only came out last year. It's on the Switch apparently, but it's also kind of a mobile game called Quidditch Champions. Don't know anything about that. But I did read that you play with less than 7 people, so it's blasphemy. But then my favorite was Quidditch World Cup, which was produced by EA Sports. That's kind of cool to think, like, the company that did FIFA and Madden and everything did a Quidditch game, and it was actually pretty cool. And you could play as the USA. They went with this very like fall, like northeastern theme for the US. They also had England, France, Germany, Scandinavia, Japan, Spain, Australia, and Bulgaria. You would start by playing at Hogwarts, and you could unlock Quidditch Marsh and play at the first ever place where they had Quidditch. And they had special moves, so like you could earn boosts where like your guy would do a special move. And I think America's was a basketball move, which is kind of cool. So Harry Potter Quidditch World Cup, I'm going to find a version of you at some point and play. But that is kind of the history and the canon elements of Quidditch. And some nerds, I would have done this if I would have met the right people at the right time. And I'm surprised my university didn't have it. But some nerds turned Quidditch into a real sport and are still trying to legitimize it despite leaving Quidditch, the name, behind.
I mean, there's a lot of nerdy things I participate in. I don't know if I could seriously do this, but it did have quite its run. And I do believe I was involved in some sort of like maybe church or something at group activity in my youth where this was attempted, I guess, or I witnessed it, but my memory is horrible.
Nerd.
So Quidditch entered the real world in 2005 in Middlebury College in Vermont. And now it's grown into a sport that's played in 40 countries. And like Mitchell mentioned, it's no longer called Quidditch. It's called Quadball.
Because there's a thing called quad rugby, which a lot of times when a sport starts with quad, it is referring to like there's, I don't know if it's called quad tennis, but it's like people in, it's wheelchair sport. So it's interesting that they went with the word quad. But
that is interesting. Yes. I thought of like quad, like 4, like sections or something.
Yeah. Plus a kind of that like quaffle Quidditch, the Q, and or they play on a quad because it was mostly a university sport at first.
Oh, there we go. Basically, there's brooms or some sort of stick, usually PVC pipe, between the person's legs at all time, which I do think adds an element to it because you have to like either be clenching that, I guess, or holding on with one hand to the stick. So you're like going around one-handed. Do you look a little silly maybe? I don't know, but people take this very seriously. So good on them. Each team has 7 players, 3 chasers, 2 beaters, 1 keeper, and 1 seeker. There's the quaffle, which is usually a deflated volleyball used by chasers to score through one of the 3 hoops on the opposing side, worth 10 points each. Obviously, this all takes place on the ground, just to emphasize this. There are
just
bludgers.
For now, they're going to figure out the flying thing.
They're going to figure it out.
Any minute.
They're going to figure it out. They're essentially dodgeballs for the bludgers being thrown by the beaters, which I do think is fun. I think that's a fun part of Quidditch, and I think it's a fun part of Quadball that throw things at people. We all love dodgeball, kind of. And if a player is hit, they must dismount their broom and run back to touch their own hoops before rejoining play. The snitch, instead of a flying golden ball, it's a neutral athlete dressed in yellow with a tennis ball and a sock attached to their waistband. The seeker's job is to catch it and earn 30 points to end the game. So today, like I said, they say it's played in 40 countries with tournaments like the Quidditch World Cup and the European Games. They did change their name in 2022. A lot of the reasoning behind that was the controversy with J.K. Rowling and her statements about transgender people, but also has been stated that it was also to avoid confrontation with Warner Brothers over the trademark of the term Quidditch because it's only used for Harry Potter, so it is a trademark term. And you can still, put together a team and play if you go to usquadball.org or Google it in your country, where you can play Quadball. You can get your own team and join tournaments or find other people you'd like to play with and see where they play and if you can meet up with them.
If you want to watch this, I'm sure it's on YouTube. I don't know. I didn't check. But there's a fun portrayal of it in a movie I really like called The Internship, starring Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, where they do an internship at Google. And one of the team building activities is them playing Quidditch. And it's like it might be different from the new Quadball rules, but it is a good depiction of like a lot of the rules and things that I know do actually exist. And true to Quidditch, I think Quadball requires you to have, I think you have to have two genders represented. However they put that, I don't know how it's phrased properly, but it is interesting that they do that. It's just funny. Like, I don't know if there's a way holding a broom between your legs was ever going to like really evolve, but you could have taken elements of the sport. I just think the 150 points thing, which I think has been changed actually, and the snitch guy runs out after a certain amount of time. I think that is, yeah, it just makes it invaluable. I thought maybe they should try it on ice because it's a little more like flying, you know? But anyway, I've thought of
Rollerblades,
good ways to
maybe?
do. Yeah. I do think there's room in this world for a Quidditch roller coaster where like they've got single rail, like one person ones, dueling coasters as the seekers, and then they have like a 2-person one as a beater. Like you have 4 intertwining roller coasters, and then like a keeper drop tower that moves side to side. Look, I've got it all planned out. Call me Comcast. Anyway, yeah, Quidditch, you know? And then Steven, have you prepared a Quidditch musical number for us?
That was your
I
segment?
have. Everyone prepare to have your ears bleed? No.
I hope it's a wrap. But yeah, Quidditch is obviously, I think, sport. So I was randomly thinking about there are people like who are very condescending towards people who are passionate about sports, and it changes their mood, and they're like, how can you be so invested in a game, even though it obviously is an important part of like culture and history and being active, and people do care. And yeah, people are silly about it at times, but I just remember meeting some girls who were like, I can't, if you care about sports, I just can't. And I'm like, well, that's rude. But I think you could look at a character the same way. I think it's actually quite important that Harry, even though it kind of starts to lose some of shade, I think this it makes the world feel more 360 that wizards have this, and I think that it is an important thing to Harry when it seems a bit superficial at times. And obviously we see Ron get involved, we see Ginny get involved, and Hermione kind of eye rolls it, but she also sees the importance of it to the fabric of the student body, whatever.
Well, I don't think
I
she
think
really
it
liked
is
Quidditch
important.
all that much until she, met Victor Crumb. I think she gained some interest there all of a sudden for some reason.
No, I don't think she liked it. I think she learned to like tolerate and appreciate, because she does kind of like say it's just a game, like we're worried about Voldemort, but like it makes so much sense that a 15-year-old would think, you know what's just as important as killing Voldemort? Catching the freaking snitches.
Snitches. So what do you guys
Championship.
hope happens in the show? Do you hope they expand on Quidditch? Do you hope there's more Quidditch?
I think it could serve a purpose. You know, there's the part in Chamber of Secrets where they have the confrontation before practice. I think Quidditch adding to Harry's stress and adding to Harry's ego or his good self-esteem, like in a good way. I think using practices and using these interactions, like she used them in the book to intertwine with certain stories. I think every match that's in the book should be depicted in the TV show, and I think that
Or more.
a lot of them serve the story. I don't think they're there just to be there, and they could also be fun. And I hope they found a more comfortable way to shoot it, because I know it was not that comfortable to film all this green screen crap. What do you guys want to see?
True. And they got to find a way to put some cushions on there too. Though one thing I forgot to talk about with the brooms is that the firebolt, like remember how the firebolt had like those pedal things on it to like put your feet on? Those are goblin made apparently. So all of the metal on the firebolt is goblin made, and the reason there were so few firebolts is because the goblins would often go on strike, and so they had a very limited number of these. But I do think that there's some room there, like with production design, right? Like how do you design the broom so that people can actually be on them for extended period of time? Because we've talked all about the discomfort, and there's no real cushioning spells. Unfortunately, I don't think WB has cracked that technology. But no, I want all of them there. I think that we want to see as much Quidditch as we possibly can, and I think there's a lot of shows that are able to include a lot of sports and everything. Especially when it's centered around schools and stuff, without being 100% focused on it. And so they can. It's possible they can make it happen.
Yeah, I like the way Quidditch is incorporated in the story. It means so much to Harry. We just read this in the first book, like the first time he flies, like Mitchell kind of mentioned that he's like a natural athlete when it comes to Quidditch and flying. So that element builds his confidence in the world so much. But it has, there's so much that happens during Quidditch, the Dementor showing up, Draco trying to trick him. the elements of Ron wanting to be on the team and Harry becoming Quidditch captain and trying to like navigate that with like who gets to play and being accused of picking his best friend over like the what's his name, Cormac, all that kind of stuff. There's like fun parts of the story. Like, so I hope they develop the Quidditch enough that it makes sense that those things happen within the story. And it's not just like, oh, we're just throwing this in. We're throwing Quidditch in the story at this moment because story happens during this, which I feel like is what happens in the movies. Like, it doesn't feel exactly part of like Hogwarts and going to Hogwarts. It's in the beginning, yes, and then it's kind of forgotten, and then just when we need it to be there. And there's a little bit of that in the book as well from JK. But I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to see if they make it look any different than what we see. Like, that's not exactly how I imagine the stands and everything, what we get.
No, it really surprised me. But it makes sense that the crowd has to be high. That's what's interesting about the Quidditch World Cup, where the stadium looks massive in the film, but even in the book, it says 100,000 wizards attended. And when you think about how many wizards there are in Britain, that is, I think, a massive part of the wizarding population of the entire world. And that kind of makes sense. Like 1 billion people often watch some part of the World Cup in the real world. 1 in 7 human beings. It's probably more than that. Watch at least a little bit of it. That's kind of crazy. So it makes sense that the wizarding world would be that obsessed.
That's true. One thing that they definitely have to include is the championship in Prisoner of Azkaban, where Harry and the team win. That's something that we did not get in the movies and we really need to have, in part because it's a culmination, right, of all the work and everything to get there. But I think also, like, after that point is where the books and the story kind of takes a pretty dark turn. And so it's really interesting to me how that kind of, is this peak of like the joy and fun of the magical world. And then from that on, like, Quidditch is tied into, Umbridge ruining everyone's lives, and then him, basically almost murdering Malfoy. And so even that, everything gets darker from that point on. So I think it's really key that they make that awesome in season 3.
There are some Quidditch tactics that they have listed at the bottom here, and I wonder if these are from the video games. I don't know, but they're very fun. So let's start with the Clemondiston charge. A chaser stands on their broomstick, leaps, and thrusts the quaffle toward a goalpost. And then you have the Dionysus dive. A chaser stands on their broomstick and leaps, punching the quaffle toward a goalpost. And then Finborough flick is if the chaser uses their broomstick to hit the quaffle. Anyway, I think it's hilarious that they have all these fun little things, and I hope like some nerd got to make these up and it ended up in the video game, and now it's canon, in my opinion. And by the way, for anyone who has tried Quidditch or Quadball in the real life, you are a nerd, and that's okay. I do things that I think people should make fun of. It is okay to do things that are objectively silly.
I'm sure they're having a blast, but it is silly, but I'm all for it. You know what? LARPing looks silly, but people do that.
If you're having fun, you do you. It is kind of LARP. It is a little LARPing sport, really.
We are grown adults doing a Harry Potter podcast right now.
Well, and I mean, there's something to be said no matter what it is. You pick something that's like difficult and can be challenging, and if you enjoy it, even better, right? And then like get good at it, put in the work, and go and win your games or your championships, whatever it is. Like, that's just an important part of growing as a human. So if you're doing that with football, like a typical jock, that's cool. If you're doing it LARPing, that's cool too.
These people look pretty athletic. I'll tell them that. I couldn't do it.
The Quidditch
Cup, it's a lot of running and stuff. Like, there's no way you can do that. And like, I couldn't do that. I'm a fatty. It's not going to work.
I was trying to see who won the Quidditch Cup one year, because don't they say that like, oh, they haven't won it since Charlie was here, but we don't actually know.
But then didn't we figure out that it hasn't been that long since Charlie's been gone?
Yeah, I think Charlie was gone for 1 or 2 years since.
The timeline doesn't work out very well.
And also, okay, there's also an element of like the size and the amount of games and stuff, like the whole controversy of how many kids actually go to Hogwarts. I was thinking about this even with the sorting. Do they sort the same amount of kids in each thing? Or maybe one year only 2 kids are in Ravenclaw, and like how many kids go to Hogwarts? It wouldn't make sense. There's only so few games if there's only like 300 kids there. I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, that means 28 of the 300 kids. Also, Harry's teams don't have reserves. He has to be like, oh, Dean, you haven't been practicing with us all year, but we need you to fill in now. Like, wouldn't you have backups that train with the team? Gosh, Joe.
Maybe J.K. Rowling just isn't all that athletically literate, about how those things
I
work.
think
So
she's
maybe it wouldn't
made
hurt
that clear.
back in the day.
Yeah, she doesn't care. And that's okay. It's very fun, but there are some real flaws. As far as students at Hogwarts, yeah, if there are, can't you do the math? Isn't it like 280 if you have?
That's what a lot of people say, but then there's also been mentioned that there's like been up to 1,000 students there at a time. So I don't know. I don't know if it's just the
Well,
need
here's
of how
something
many
that I
wizard children
remember
there are.
is that the years that Harry was there, like when Harry was born, that was during Voldemort's like reign, and everyone was terrified. So a lot of people didn't have kids, is what it said. So his classes, like around that age group, are apparently much smaller than other like graduating classes might be. So it's, but there's not a lot of difference between his and Ginny's, for example, because we see that sorting too.
Yeah.
Well, no, we don't. That's when he finds out about the Ginny, but he sees one in book 4, I think, and that's it's similar in size. So I do wonder at what point were the classes bigger and how much bigger were they double the size?
Also, you're right in that every group is not going to have the exact same number of kids. That doesn't make sense. So maybe some had 7, some had 5 in those years, and in other years it's more like some had 12, some had 15. But yeah, I think it makes it 1,000 would be pushing it, but maybe. But also, then only one teacher per subject. You need a backup charms teacher. Come on. This has gone too far. Well, exciting things are happening in the world of Harry Potter. Chocolate products continue to hit the shelves of Walmart each and every week, and Stephen has bought and eaten every single one of them. We have filming taking place across London, and hopefully a lot going on at Leavesden Studios. We just got a trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu today, and it just made me think, that means like just I knew that one has been shot and everything, but I just thought this time next year we could be getting a trailer for Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone season 1, an HBO production featuring Netflix. But anyway, things are happening, and we hope you've enjoyed hearing a little bit about broomsticks. I wish there were as many brooms as there were wands. I feel like there's lots to dig into in the broomstick marketing world. And this dear sport of Quidditch, I'm sorely tempted to download that Quidditch game. I think we're going to do it. Do I have time to play it? Absolutely not.
Do you have a
And none of us-
PS2 or an emulator? How do you play that?
I'm sure I could get an emulator. None of us own a broom. You can buy brooms at the theme parks. You can buy hyper realistic ones that are crazy expensive, or you can buy these crappy plastic ones. But none of us have gone that far.
We do have brooms to sweep our homes, though, I think.
Yes, I do. I have a push broom. Hannah calls it a brush.
Mine has
but
those
the British
special
must use the
drugs
word
on
broom.
it, so I get high when I use it. It's awesome.
Yeah, we got to get some of those herbs on our brooms.
What? Is that
salve.
a thing?
I was just saying in the history thing, people put a salve on the broom and they thought that was making people hallucinate that they were flying. But whatever.
Pagans.
Those pagans.
Good to know you pay attention.
All right, well,
jeez.
If you want to reach out, give us your thoughts, please find us on social media at HPTV Podcast. I was supposed to do that in the intro. Or email us at hptvpodcast@gmail.com. And next week, we're going to be talking teachers. 2 of your favorite teachers. Transfiguration, herbology. Do your homework, and you'll hear all about them next week. Jamie, send us out.
Peace out, snitches.